I'm sitting here on the Lower East Side of Manhattan with Michael Foley, who is a gallerist and educator and career builder with a very successful, awesome photography gallery. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can get here or somewhere like it. So, Michael, we have about 2 million photographers looking at this right this very moment, at least 2 million views. And they all want to know, how do they get here? What do they need to do to get their work exhibited in either a prominent New York City gallery or even their own local gallery wherever they live?
Right. Wow, that's a big question.
That's a huge question. And
big question. All right. There are two things, well, actually three things I would say that any artist, any photographer needs to be mindful of when they're kind of pursuing this career path. One is that they have to clearly define their vision. In other words, what makes their work unique to them? One time I walked into a gallery and I asked this question. I said, so what does it take to get into this gallery? And it was a top gallery in Chelsea. And she said, well, that's easy. And I said, what? She goes, that artist needs to make work that only that artist could make. And I think that goes beyond style, goes beyond signature look. It really is the work that you need to make as an artist, and that will define you and distinguish you from any other photographer out there. And that's certainly the first thing I look for. So you have to have that. If that's not happening, I don't care if you fly me a jet out here, to do a studio visit with you wherever you are. That's not going to be enough. You have to be distinguished in that way. And then secondly, once you have that and you do the reach out, you have to treat me like a human being. I have interests, I have needs, I have ego. So if it's the email you send or you come into the gallery, however you communicate to me, if it's all about you and your work, I'm not going to be interested in you. So find out what I'm interested in. Come into the gallery if you can and see the show. Don't even say anything to me. Walk out and then send me an email or write me a letter. And if you're not here, if you can't come to the gallery, then check out my website. See what I've done in the past. See that I'm an instructor at School of Visual Arts. See other curatorial projects that I'm interested in. And reach out to me as a human being that way. Because you do that first, I'm going to be interested in what you have to say. Because listen, I'm human. And if someone compliments me on the work I show or something I've curated, I'm going to listen, and then I'm like, oh, really? That's great. So it's kind of an indirect way, and it's not like a Trojan horse. You have to be authentic about it. Don't just say, oh, I like what you do, check my stuff out. You really have to be authentic about it, because when you look at my gallery or any gallery, you have to feel like your work is a good fit with the other artists that I show. There are over 100, maybe 120 galleries in the Lower East Side alone. There are 3 times as many as in Chelsea. There are 3 times as many in Chelsea. So you have a lot of choices. And the reason why we do the things we do is we're very different. My gallery is different from the next photography gallery, from the next photography gallery. So you really need to search out the good fit for you. And once you do that, once you target your audience, and once you have your things together, and you do that outreach, know the third thing is it's a long haul. It doesn't happen overnight. Maybe you start with a group show. Maybe you start with a solo show maybe 2 or 3 years down the road. Maybe the gallerist just said, hey, we'll take some of your work here just to see how what our clients think about it, okay? So don't expect anything to happen overnight. And the last thing is New York, in many ways, is the top of the pyramid. There are so many other places you could be showing, whether that's next door to a library, a bar, a coffee shop, whatever it is, or a gallery in your town or smaller city. So just because some New York gallerist doesn't pay you any mind or rejects you or you can't get a space, that's not the end of the world. You got to start somewhere. And that's really the key. It's a long haul and you got to be in it for the journey. Thank you. Good night.
That was like the longest I've ever been silent in an interview. I didn't want to disrupt the roll of that train. That was perfect.
Okay, good.
I have questions, of course.
Of course, yeah. No, go ahead. I try to answer your question completely.
But if we just need one take to tell people what they need to know, that was it, man. That was it.
Okay.
Okay. Wow. All right. First of all, the first part about knowing that might be the most abstract of what you said. Create work that only you can create, right? So I would love to break that down a little bit and understand that better, because I think the second point is so spot on, the idea that you need to specifically target people and understand them and reach out to them as a human and compliment them. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Right.
But what you're reaching out to them with, okay? A lot of photographers out there, they have a wide range of interests. They're doing a lot of things. They're probably finding inspiration from other photographers, and you see that influence on their work. And how is it that they know when they're ready to come to you? Because I would assume they get a shot, right? Like if I come to you and my work is not ready and I haven't defined myself, and then I come back a year later, are you going to be looking just as hard the second time around at me if I keep coming back, or is the first impression a very important one? And if so, how do they know when they're ready to show you their work?
Right. First impression, yeah, obviously, like anything else, it's got to pique my curiosity, and it has to engage me in some way. And I hope this doesn't sound too curt, but I can usually tell if the work is appropriate, not good or bad, but appropriate for me in like 5 seconds.
Can
or
you
less.
define appropriate?
Well, yeah, sure. So my gallery shows not only photography. It shows painting, it shows works on paper, it shows collage. I have a strong photography background. I worked in several galleries that specialize only in photography. I showed photography alone for about 2 years, and then I added other medium. So one thing is that I'm not a traditional photography gallery. A lot of the work you see in my gallery, as far as photography goes, is you may look at it and say, what is that? I'm not sure, is that a photograph? So first of all, it's not a traditional, it's not about a person going out in the world, making a photograph of a tree and bringing it back and printing it and putting it in a mat and frame. That's just too traditional for me. There's nothing wrong with it,
right.
But it doesn't fit, what I do. So I try to look for work that relates to other media, okay? Not to fool people, but just to show the correlation. And secondly, I look for work that is conceptually based, in that it has an idea behind it. In other words, often the photographer has an idea, and then they think, how can I photograph that idea? So it's not as if I'm just going to go out in the world and make photographs of things. But I have an idea. I don't know exactly how to visualize that idea yet, but through photography, I'm going to find out how. And a lot of my photographers work with that in mind. So that's a little esoteric, I guess, but at the end of the day, you go to the website, go to foleygallery.com, look at the photographers, look at the other work, and say, hey, does this feel like my family? Like,
yes.
Are these my cousins, or are they like strangers to me?
Right.
And if they're your cousins or your brothers or sisters, then you're like, yeah, that's your gallery, okay? And so you have to feel an affinity. Forget about like the name of the gallery, forget about the location of the gallery, forget about the size of the gallery or the prestige of the gallery. Does your work fit in with what else is going on in that gallery, period? Okay?
Yes.
You gotta find your family. You gotta find your tribe as far as a gallerist goes, because it is kind of like family in a weird way. And the closer you can get to that, I think the better.
On a side note, there also seem to be a lot of galleries throughout the world that may not present your work on their walls, but might want to represent you online. That they have. Did you recommend pursuing that avenue as well? Yeah,
I recommend, depending on where you are, to take anything you possibly can, with the caveat that it's always building up. In other words, when I first started as a photographer, I showed an abandoned warehouse with a few friends. Okay, that was like the starting point.
Right.
And then I moved up to the Beano Cafe in San Francisco. So then I was like a coffee shop. So little by little, nothing was beneath me. But once I reached a certain place,
you didn't go back.
I wouldn't go back down to the coffee shop. Right. Nothing wrong with the coffee shop. But after you reach that point, you kind of keep going. So build on what you've already established.
I see.
It's rung by rung. And whatever comes next for you, take it, as long as you feel that it is spreading your net or spreading your visibility a little bit more. There's nothing, especially today, there's back when I started in 1989, the only way that people got to see contemporary work or art or photography was going to a gallery. A museum was, pretty much, older stuff or established stuff, but you went to a gallery to see it. Now, come on, there's so many ways to see it instantly online. So, use that.
Right.
The gallery is just one way to do it. It is not the only way.
And when a photographer approaches you, specifically, how should they do it? Should they send, like, so now they have their body of work, they feel
Right.
good, they feel like
Right.
it's unique, and I think I could summarize it by saying maybe you haven't seen it before, but it's still within the world of the kind of work you would present.
Sure.
But you haven't seen that specific thing before.
Right,
So it's,
right.
it's unique and exciting to you. And now they have it. What should they do? Do they send you that follow-up email? They've researched you. It's personal email. Do they attach photos to that email?
Right.
Do they send you a printed portfolio? What's the best way to actually present their work to you?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of ways. Let's just pretend that you're not local and you're not accessible to the gallery in person. So,
Well, can we pretend both ways?
yes, we can. We'll do the first one. And so you're going to send an email. At a smaller gallery like my own, I just have myself and another staff member. I look at every email that comes into this gallery. Now, you might not think that, but I do. Not every gallery owner does, of course, when there's a larger staff. But I do, because I always want to be looking for new work. Always. Anytime you hear a gallery say, oh, I'm not looking at new work, or you look at their website and say, not taking submissions right now, it's total bullshit. Okay? Because we are always looking for something fresh and new. I don't want to miss out on anything. So I will look at it. So I will look at an email, a direct email that is personal, that references something that I've done, either my current show, a past show, oh, I saw you speaking at this engagement, whatever it is. So immediately there's a sense of personal connection, okay? Mm-hmm. And then always include, let it be short, always include one JPEG, one image in that email. And most importantly, the link to your website. Okay, because I'm going to tell in one image whether or not I'm interested enough to go to that website. If you send me a PDF, you send me 10 images, you don't send me any images, that's not going to work as well.
One image, link to the website.
Right, that killer image, that one image that any friend of yours or colleague says, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And once you link to the website, the development of that website, I would imagine you want to also be very conservative with what you put on the website, right? Only your best images on the website. Do you have a number of images in their gallery? Because I know sometimes photographers have the impulse to put like everything out there.
Right,
I could do this, or I could do this, or I
right.
could do this, and all of a sudden, this definition you've cultivated of who you are as an artist in this email to you gets lost because there's so many. And here's my forest project, and here's my snails project. Right? Do you think that it should be focused? Like a laser beam, similarly to the email that they send you?
Yeah, I think it should be as concise as possible. So there are many photographers, in fact, I would say the majority of photographers that show in galleries, but also do editorial advertising work, okay? They should be separated out. There's nothing
on different websites or different sections of the website?
I believe different websites. There's nothing wrong with being a so-called fine artist and a person that takes jobs, you know, to photograph for Nike or a magazine. Completely fine. Everybody does that. Not a big deal. But it should be separated out because I want to be working with people that have a very refined and clear vision. Now, you can put as many series on your website as possible, but I need to see the direct visual link between them all. Because a lot of artists have been around for a while. They have 3 or 4 series. That's great if they're linked visually. Like it makes sense, like, oh yes, of course, of course, of course. But if it's all over the place, no. The other thing you can do that I might recommend, if you have a body of work that's nearly complete, you feel very strongly about, maybe it's a little unique for you, just create a dedicated website for one body of work. That's it. And if I'm interested, I will want to see more. If you give me too much that's not focused and tight, then I'll lose my interest. You know, like they say, always leave them wanting more.
Right.
Okay, that's why you send one JPEG. I don't need to see 20. I need to see one to pique my curiosity and interest. And then I go, and then I can always ask for more. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, what if they're in town? Should they stop in?
Definitely. You got to get to know the gallery.
After the email? Or just instead
first of all,
in lieu of the email, come in and just say hi and make your pitch in person?
Well, first I would do is, do I have time for a story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, just as an example, okay?
Yeah.
So when I was an artist in my early 20s, I was living in San Francisco, being an artist, just being an artist, right? And there was one gallery, Frankel Gallery, that I liked very much, and they showed all these people that I was really interested in. Now, I didn't go there with my portfolio. I just went because I liked the work they showed. Mm-hmm. And they got to know me, and I got to know them, and I worked in a coffee shop around the corner. So I was just Mr. Friendly.
Oh, right, okay.
So one day, the director walked into the coffee shop and said, hey, Michael, have you ever thought about working in a gallery? Now, I have no experience working in a gallery. I don't know what that's like, and I didn't even want to. But they came and they offered it to me. Now, why did they do that? Because I'm an expert in galleryness? No, because I'm a decent person. I never asked for anything from them. They knew that they could work with me. I was a decent guy, and so they offered me a job. They offered me a job out of the blue. The same thing can be translated as an artist. If you become friendly with the gallery just because you're an artist, you're a photographer, I'll get to know you. Hey, I see you at my openings. My name is Michael, or whatever. Or they come in and just say, hey, good show, and sign in the book and leave. That's it. They start to become familiar with me and friendly, okay? Now, I'm not saying people should do this as some sort of plan to get into a gallery, but let's be real. I want to work with somebody that I'm familiar with, that's friendly, that's likable. Okay? And if you're none of those things, I'm not working with you. So one way to do it if you're local is go in, get a vibe, get to know the staff. If you don't like the staff, why would you possibly want to show there? If you don't like what's on the walls, why would you want to show there? If you don't like the location, it's crappy, or the staff is rude to you, why would you want to show there? So you gotta check it out and see if it's for you. And then people just get to know you. And then when you actually reach out and say, hey, I'm an artist, or I have a group show in Brooklyn, I don't know if you'll have time, but I just want to leave you my invite card. I'm going to take it.
Right. And there's also, it's more than just that one-to-one thing where you know the gallery and then they show your work. It's just a building of relationships, right? Like, but for example, World, my relationship with Michael is interesting because I met Michael like 15 or more years ago at International ICP, right? And I took a class on how to get into a gallery. I was a young photographer. I had a body of work. I didn't know what to do. He taught this incredible class. At the end of the class, we all had a group show in his space, right? That was 15 years ago. Now, since that time, in 15 years, my body of work has exploded in a lot of ways for me personally as an artist, and I've had exhibitions all over the world, but never with Michael. My work and his aesthetic don't really set and fit. However, he has been incredibly helpful to me as a resource in so many ways. When I'm creating a new book, I reach out, I send him images, I ask his opinion. When I have other exhibitions, I ask whether or not he thinks this is a good fit. And it's just been such a productive, healthy, artistic relationship, even though it's not that one-to-one, when do I get a show on your walls? But it's helped me evolve as an artist and as a creator. So the more relationships that you can build in the art world, whether or not it's that direct one-to-one thing,
absolutely,
the better.
And because I like you, I would refer you. If I knew of an opportunity that was right, a group show or whatever, I would refer you, because I'm not feeling like you're constantly like, oh, come on, Michael, when are you going to show my work, man? This stuff's really hot.
Or trying in any way to trade on the relationship.
Right.
And he's invited me in to speak to his schools, and so I find it to be really healthy just to have relationships with people in the art world.
Right.
And then you can bounce stuff off of them. And get like honest, genuine feedback. And if you always have an ulterior motive where you're trying to get something from somebody, that just colors it in a way they can read it.
And we can sniff it out. We
pretty quickly.
Can sniff it out pretty quickly, and we don't want any part of that. No one wants any part of that for whatever business they're in.
How important to you is a photographer's social media presence and their ability to promote the exhibition?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I probably wouldn't have considered, because so much of the burden historically has been on the gallery to promote and build a career and stuff. But there's one artist, Joseph Costa, that I started working with about 2 years ago, and I found him on Instagram. So he did an ICP takeover, actually, because he graduated from ICP, and I followed them and I saw it and I was like, wow, this stuff is great, and we reached out to him directly. So yes, when somebody has a big social media presence for the right reasons, not because they're just posting silly things or sexy things and they have a big following.
But their artwork,
or, it can be a combination. I mean, I would totally recommend to have a so-called very personal page and one that's a little more professional, but it can be lighthearted. It doesn't have to be so serious. But yes, when people have a built-in audience, that's sexy. It's kind of like the difference between working with a photographer who's just starting out and working with a photographer that's mid-career. They come with generally good things in their history. They have museum shows or collections, or they have a client base. So if I start working with an artist that already has clients or has bought their work, that's a big up for me. So the same as with social media presence. That doesn't always translate to sales, but it doesn't hurt at all, as long as it's a positive one, obviously. That is not a contingent. I don't have, oh, well, you need at least 23,000 followers to show with me. Right. Not that. But if you have it, if you have an audience, that tells me there's interest. It's kind of already been filtered. There's a group of people that like this work. Whether or not they're going to buy it, I don't know, but they like it and they follow it and they're interested in it. And I know that there are people, collectors and curators, that follow Instagram feeds, you know, for the purpose of either buying work or curating that work into, you know, gallery shows. And the beautiful thing is a lot of times artists don't even know that. You know, who's this person following me? They have no idea. Right. And it's actually somebody very important, so be careful out there. what you load, because the right person may be looking at your feed and you post something that's kind of boneheaded, or you diss somebody or whatever, right. It's like, oh, I'm not working with that person. Would
you generally agree that you're only as good as your worst image? Like whatever you put out there. So if you have a series of photos that are dynamic, and then suddenly you start posting some secondary images just to keep posting,
right?
You'll be judged by those secondary images.
Well, I think it'll bring bring the average down a little bit. But here's the thing: what a gallerist can do, hopefully, offer that person is editing possibilities. So I need to see the good raw material there. I need to see that exists. And if there are other things that get thrown up there that are less interesting to me, then I can work with that. I can talk about editing a person down a little bit and focusing them a little bit. If there's a trend of images that are kind of going downward, I may lose interest, that's for sure.
Right.
But if there's enough strong images in there, and I just think that the artist needs a little curatorial advice, if you will, then I think I'm totally fine for that. And actually that's kind of exciting for me, to get involved with something that can be developed, you know, over time.
So in summary here, this is not an overnight success story, being in a gallery.
It is a long journey, and it is filled with highs and lows and ups and downs. There's a lot of galleries out there. There are a lot of artists out there. And you just take what you can when it comes along, and you'll always be mindful of building your career, not wanting instant satisfaction necessarily, because a lot of times you don't get it. Sometimes it happens, but very rarely. Even with me, I've had this gallery for 12 years, you know. It's taken a long time to build a client base, artists that people recognize, my reputation, things like that. So it's not overnight.
Yeah, and
definitely not.
So tell us a little about this new work. It just opened, Subtext 2 Meditations.
Right. So this is work by an artist named Wyatt Gallery.
Wyatt Gallery.
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay.
Okay. I always got to get over that bump, you know? And I tell you, I met Wyatt, I'd say even longer than you. I'd say 16, 17 years ago. And we were in a class, and he was learning about working with galleries. And I was a gallerist, but I was curious about, you know, maybe teaching a class like this. So I remember when he introduced himself as Wyatt Gallery, I saw him at coffee break and I said, listen, man, you got to change your name. I mean, like, you know, Wyatt Actor. You know? It's just like, it's like too close. Right. Anyway, he did not change his name. But on his website, when you first bring it up, it says Wyatt Gallery, a person, not a place.
Oh, good.
So you got to work with what you got, right? Yeah. So I met Wyatt. This is a great example. He had been doing a lot of different work, a lot of documentary work. He did work in after Hurricane Katrina. He did work in Haiti after the earthquake. But this work is a little bit different. We did this a second show. This one's called Subtext 2 Meditations. And these are actually photographs. They look like abstract paintings, but they are actually photographs of the advertising space in the New York City subway system where there's no advertising. And after a while, you can see the glue, the paint, bits of paper, residue that has accumulated for maybe even decades. And then for a moment, there's no advertising on it. And so when Wyatt finds something like this, it's almost like a meditation for him, almost like a Rothko painting. It's contemplative. And he photographs them, and sometimes they're in wide panoramas like this, sometimes they're a little bit smaller. And what I like about it is that we don't know exactly what we're looking at first, and yet at the same time, it is something that many New Yorkers pass by all the time. Certainly in a subway, we're not looking around too much, especially at kind of blank, tattered walls. But when you really stop and look, they become, for Wyatt, very kind of meditative. And like abstract expressionism, almost like an unintentional painting. I mean, there's no way that like several MTA employees got around and said, hey, let's create something really cool down here. It's just that they painted over, and that's where you can see the little drips here that have been painted over by different employees that have kind of gone outside the line, if you will. And they just turn into beautiful things. And maybe the next day or the next week, they're gone. They're covered up again with some movie advertisement. So they're temporary, always changing. And that's what I really like about this work.
I see.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about his process. How long does he sit with this?
You mean when he develops the work?
No, he finds, is he on the hunt for this? Is he going around subways looking for something? Does he see it and he goes and gets his camera? And how long does he take to shoot it? Does he light it? What is his artistic process?
He'll always be aware of it. And just like anybody else that is really into something very specific that his friends know about, you know, his friends will text him and say, hey, I was on the Montrose L. There's a really cool advertising space you got to see. And he'll be like, okay, I gotta keep that in mind. So he definitely has his camera, but for me it's more about serendipity. It's not like because you could, you know, where do you look? You know, there's a few hunting grounds for him that these already occur.
He'll just be in the subway and suddenly see one.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're when you're looking for something, you have a tendency to find it a little more often, right?
Yes.
And so that's really it. I can't say that he's actively going from subway to subway.
But the thing that I think is really cool about this is the point you made about how you take the ordinary and make it extraordinary.
Exactly.
Like coming to you now, I probably passed one of these. I didn't see it. You know, when I leave the gallery, I will probably be aware of this on the sides of buildings. And in some ways, it'll just it'll open my eyes a bit in a way. But the other thing I love about this for the photographers out there is the idea that we all see this, and he thought to document it, and now it's in a gallery. I never thought to. The million of other photographers didn't. There's always a new idea out there, and it speaks to what you were saying about how find your unique voice, right? That there's no end to the ideas if you're developing as an artist and creating something new and challenging yourself.
And it doesn't need to be overly complicated or convoluted or deep or esoteric. It can be
overly photoshopped in post, right? I mean, this is the image.
This is the image. Now, for a panorama like this, you can tell just from perspective, the images have been stitched together by making several frames because it would be impossible to photograph it at one time. But the exciting thing for him is that these are as he found them. They're not added upon, they're not colorized, they're not changed in any way. Nothing wrong with doing that kind of stuff. But for Wyatt, it's really about, like you're saying, this ordinary thing that most of us come in contact with in New York every day or every week, but it hasn't registered for us. So why is it registered for him versus you or someone else? And that's, as an artist, you have to tap into. It's not about what's the most exciting subject I could photograph. It's what's the most exciting subject for you that you can photograph. And hopefully it becomes exciting for us when you're able to translate it and call our attention to it.
Do you feel for yourself personally or for the industry that there's a difference between something like this, a found object, something photographed that's in the moment and is real and that's what you see on paper, versus something that has been basically constructed in post, a composite image, for example? Do you personally, and does the industry as a whole, look at one of those as having more value?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, I think it is, whatever you're trying to get across, you use
all the tools at your disposal.
Use the tools that are appropriate for you, okay? And that's the bottom line. As long as you can justify, it's not about defending, but if you can justify, what color, black and white, what format are you using, how big are your prints, all of those decisions that you make, how much post do you do, are based on the content and what type of photographer you are. You're not better or worse for using some and not using others. It's just that you have to define what is essential for you and why it makes sense. So for Wyatt, going in there, could he add things? Could he tweak the color? Yeah, sure, he could. But the point is that these are common. These are accessible. They're public.
I'm seeing that these prints are the majority of them are pretty large, right? Some are larger than others. Do you tend to favor larger prints, or is that just specifically to the artist, or are these life size as they are? What goes into that decision?
That's a great thing. And so, because these have this kind of trompe-l'oeil effect, where you feel like you're actually looking at a painting, the first idea was, let's do them one-to-one. Let's do them real size. But if you look at this panorama, if we did this one-to-one, it would be about 20 feet long. So it's like, okay, I don't think we can do that. So because the body work is broad and we have 11 pieces in the show, we thought, let's have a little variety. Let's make some intimate and very contemplative, and let's make some a little bit grand.
Is that for the visual of the exhibition, or is that for the specifics of selling them? In other words, some people might want a larger print because they have more space over their couch, but it's New York City, they don't have a lot of space, so we need to give them the option of small as well.
Right. I think at the end of the day, it's the artist's vision. How do they envision this? If Wyatt said to me, you know, I think it's really important that these pieces be one-to-one scale. And I'm like, if that's the case, then we go with it, knowing that these are oversized pieces. They're not going to be, even if people like them, they're not going to be appropriate for everyone's home or budget. So the artist needs to know that going in. If they want to stick true to their vision 100%, and their vision is to make these things based on one-to-one, then they need to know what the consequences
And how
may
important is once to get back again to the artist reaching out to you, for them to have a curatorial opinion to begin with, to come in and say, here's the JPEG, but I see this image as 5 feet wide. I mean, or do they say, here are my images, and I trust you to put together an exhibition?
Right. I think there's got to be something from their end first. They have to have an idea of what they want, but just like any good writer, you always see in their novel, their thank yous always to the editor.
Right.
Okay? Thank you, the editor was amazing, you know, it really helped me shape the book. So if they come in with an idea, that's great, but if they're hard fast to that idea, sometimes that's a challenge. So often it's a collaboration.
And the other two, if they're too wishy-washy, and it's like, whatever you want to do, Michael, oh my God, you're a god.
Right.
Well,
and I appreciate that. It makes me feel really important and great.
Right.
But I know that they have to have an idea to begin with, and then we riff off that.
Right.
Like his idea originally, because of the scale, was like, let's do them one-to-one. That makes sense to me. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But then we did these big panoramas that are not as high as they are in real person, and we did the math and calculations, and they were too big.
Right.
You know, it didn't make any sense. So, you know, we adjusted that. And so now with this show, we have ones that are intimate and small, and then ones that are large. I don't think any are more than one-to-one, but some come very close to that.
So this is just like one little.
One little spot. I mean, the difference is, you notice most of them have this drip and white border. This is where this is an important point. This is where the tiles would be. Okay, we all seen the tiles on the subway. He did remove those because for him they grounded it too much in reality. So he
makes sense. Perfect.
He removed those, and then that shows you these kind of drips and kind of soft edge. Reminds me of the old like 35 millimeter like edging around photographs.
Are these additioned?
Yeah, they're addition of 5, so he'll make 5, one size only.
Oh, so you can't negotiate. I couldn't come in and say, boy, I'd love this half size, and you'd actually say no to that.
Yeah. So some people, I mean, nothing wrong with a photographer making 1, 2, 3 sizes, maybe 3 tops. But sometimes an artist has a vision for a piece having its right size. And I do believe that. I do believe every image has a so-called right size, even though you can make it bigger or smaller. That feels right. Like, oh, that looks best at this scale. Okay. Right. And then sometimes, like this piece, just to kind of show you the difference, there's no edging here, no tiling. This is from the new advertising spaces that have a natural like black border, like they actually have a frame on it. Okay. So there's nothing to really show on the edge, and he removed that border again. So it wouldn't talk too much about where it was.
Right, I understand, I understand. So what is this on, aluminum?
Yeah, it's on what they call dye bond, which is kind of a plastic-coated aluminum, and
it's matte.
Well, it's this process. The printing process is called UV cured pigment, and it's not your traditional like inkjet process because the ink would kind of sit on the surface because it doesn't soak in. So this is actually printed directly on the dye bond, the mounting material.
Right.
And then it's lacquered, clear semi-gloss lacquer, 4 coats.
So it depends on the artist.
Yeah, you could do it on paper and then mount it or whatever.
Did he come to you and say, my vision is this process?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, I mean, let's face it, like printing, mounting, and framing artwork is expensive.
Right.
So even though this process is not inexpensive, he doesn't have to worry about glass or glazing, any glare. He doesn't have to worry about printing and then mounting it. It's because it's printed directly on the mount itself. And there's nothing in the way. And then also, it's not prohibitively heavy to add like a sheet of glass to this or plexi. So there's a lot of pluses to it.
But here's a plus in terms of just, so I'm here with Michael to interview him for this, but I could just as easily have come in once again to say hi, just to show my face, But in that process, I've just learned something about printing that I didn't know.
Right.
That might now make me think about my own work and how I want to present it. So the more you're getting yourself out there just to meet galleries and get your work seen, also absorb what you get from those galleries, because you're going to see probably the cutting edge in terms of how to present work, and you can talk to them about that specifically. Ask questions that you're interested in from the gallerist. Thank you so much.
You
that
got
was
it.
awesome.
Yeah, you got it.
Awesomeness.
All right, cool.
If you're in New York City, always come see the Foley Gallery, because everything on his walls is spectacular.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.